we are back, and thank you so much for sticking with us all this time. And I want to make sure that they can hear me. Can they hear me over there? All right, we'll see if we got. You have levels over there? All right, I lost my headphones somewhere in the mix of this, so let's just see what we got. There we go. All right, nope, that's not working for me. Test, test, test. You sure we're okay over there? Yeah? All right, somewhere down the line I lost my headphones. So I don't want to say anything interesting to John until I'm sure that we're on the air and everything's really cool. Because, I mean, he might say the most shocking, interesting thing. Whoa, that's what's happening. Yeah, there's a short right here, so it's not you, Danielle. Okay? Everything's fine on the air. Wow, I could have killed myself doing that. That's just the way it's plugged in. There you go. All right. Hey, that's a great way. You know, they teach you in radio. Come back strong. Yeah, I came back strong. Came back like went out like a mountain lion, came back like a sheep, something like that from Saturday Night Live. All right. I research, and here's how I do it, John. I'll introduce you to the folks and everything. I always do a little bit of research, but not too much, because when I was a rookie in the business years ago, I would learn so much that we'd be talking to each other like we know each other, and then the people would be like, yeah, but he didn't ask the most basic question. So right off the bat, all right, John Proudstar, right?
Yeah.
The middle name, pronounce it for me.
Santanta.
Okay, because everybody wants to say Santana, don't they?
Yeah,
and I checked the
Santana.
Yeah, and I checked the spelling, and I sent it over to her, and I said, it's really Santa Anta, like the way it's spelled. You know, so that's how my mind works. So now, so now you know. Now, what I want to know, because I went and saw the artwork and everything, it was fantastic. Tribal Force, and you're credited with developing the first Native American comic book. I mean, doing the first anything is just the coolest thing in the world. So I know that that's an honor, and I want to talk about it. But before we do that, tell me, you created it. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? You're writing the story, you're doing the artwork, you're doing a little of both, what?
Back in the day, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I was collecting comic books, and I didn't understand why there wasn't any Native heroes or Latino heroes, and I would kind of daydream and think, wow, what would Spider-Man be like if he was, Native American or Mexican? And just kind of sort of have these wacky daydreams. And then I started to develop heroes in my head that would be of the culture. And I kept waiting for a Native superhero group to come out, and they never did. So finally I came up with this concept. And then in 1996, I got together with an incredible artist named Ryan Huna Smith, who is Navajo and Chemehuevi. And we put together Tribal Force, and little did we know that it was going to be the first in the history of the United States. We were just like two kids. I mean, we weren't kids, we were like 28, 29 years old. But, we were just excited about making a comic book. And then the University of Boston, I believe, contacted me when the book came out, and they wanted copies for their library. And they were the ones that informed me. They were like, you realize this is the first one in the history of the United States? And I was like, no, I didn't realize. I thought I was going to do the research eventually, but they kind of sort of did it for me. And I since then I've gone back and I've discovered there was a book in Canada called Red Eagle back in the early 80s, and it was a single Native American comic book, but it was kind of sort of Christian based. But other than that one in Canada, this was the first time it was a group of Native superheroes. Kind of like the X-Men.
Well, I looked at enough of it to know that you touch on some pretty delicate, in-your-face topics. It's really, a graphic novel more than a comic? I mean, this is not just that kind of stenciled thing. I mean...
Yeah, it does, because I've worked with survivors of child molestation and violent youth offenders for most of my life, and that is an important issue to the Native population, and being Native American, and you grow up around that. I'm Native American. I'm also Latino and Jewish.
Yeah, the same combination everybody is.
Yeah, exactly. But those issues are very pertinent to us because it's very prevalent on the reservation. So I want this book to be familiar to Native kids, but also other kids that aren't Native. I want them to be educated by it in a way without being bored, because I don't like educational comic books. I like fun comic books, but if you use that social issue as a brushstroke, it's enough to educate, I think.
Now, what kind of response have you gotten? Because you did this a little while ago, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like you just did it.
Well, yeah. So, back in '96, we had a great response for the limited amount of money that the company Mystic Comics, who is now out of business, we sold 14,000 issues out of the gate. We got picked up by Associated Press as far as stories and stuff like that, and we were getting letters from as far as Germany, the Philippine Islands,
wow.
England, People were just astounded by it. A lot of Native Americans had written to me saying, it's about time, I've dreamt of this all my life. Just, it was really incredibly touching. And also to get letters from non-natives. This Jewish kid in Ithaca wrote me, and he had no idea that we were like the way we are. He just always had this Hollywood teepees and war paint and on horses kind
Really?
of vision. And when he started to see that we were just real people, still alive, still functioning, and that there's over 753 different tribes in the United States of America, and a lot of people don't realize this. And Hollywood has done a great job of blanketing us as just one tribe.
Hey man, don't get me started, because all Italians are in the mafia, or they're uneducated, or they're womanizers, or whatever. There's always like, yo, come on, what's going on with that? You know what I mean? That's all there is. That's it. How you doing? And I can go through every sitcom, and I've actually written articles on it. I'm like, if you want to find a woman who, and I know the actress on Cheers, and I think she was Jewish in real life. Perlman was her last name, so maybe. And she had to play the promiscuous, crazy woman, so they made her Italian on the show.
Rita Perlman.
They do the same thing with Joey on Friends. It's got to be stupid. It's got to be that,
Yeah.
So we all go through that. And people say to me when I complain, they get mad at me. Hey, but your image is cool. You're the mafia and you're womanizing. I'm like, it's not cool to me, man. And it's like, you know. It's like, or what I really say, it's not cool to me, man. So we can all relate. The Irish guy will tell me, yeah, we're all drunks. Everybody says we drink everywhere. The Jewish guy says we're all about money. So everybody knows. And it's funny how that works. I mean, my wife is half Russian and half Latina. So her dad's from Russia, defected and actually died here at a young age. But he joined our Air Force as an interpreter and things like that.
Holy cow.
So it's funny how you grow up. She said, when I grew up, I couldn't tell anyone I was half Russian because they were the evil people. Yeah. So I couldn't say that. Then a little later, I couldn't tell people that I was Hispanic because people were racist against that.
Yeah.
So, and now what is it? Now it's so cool to be, so she doesn't speak Spanish. She knows a few words, but she's wishing she embraced it now because now it's cool. But there was a time when it wasn't, you know what I mean? So we all go through that. But what I like about this kind of thing, and I remember reading an article when I was young, and you probably weren't born, that said they're comic books, not funny books. And the article was about how well written Marvel comics at the time were, and how they addressed real issues. My mom, who's no longer with us, I've always had gripes with for throwing away, Spider-Man #1 and things like because I was trying to say these are, not only was it a ton of money, Mom, but these were stories. These were real. I mean, to this day. Wow, 50-something years old, right? I've moved a million times in broadcasting, right? Yeah. I have probably 4 or 5 boxes of probably about maybe 300 that I just would not part with. Yeah. And they're all, with the exception of 1 or 2, Superman or whatever, they're all Marvel comics. If I ever do part with them, I'll take a picture of every cover. Maybe I'll, tear the covers off, God forbid, and make them art.
Yeah, mount them.
But it just, so John comes in here and sits down, and we both have comic book wallets, okay? So here's the difference now. So I needed a new wallet, and I go to a place that's inexpensive. Where did I go? Ross, Ross, where they have a bunch of wallets, right? And I'm thinking, I can probably spend $20 and get a real nice wallet at Ross, because I can't spend a ton of money on a wallet. I'm not, when you're not single and being cool, you don't really care about those things. So I go in and I'm looking around, and bam, and so I'm stopped dead because I see 4. I see the Hulk, Thor, Captain America, and Spider-Man. Nice. And they're all in beautiful metal containers with the real artwork. And the beauty of these were they're actually real covers from real comics.
Yeah, actual covers.
And I saw them, and I know I even have a couple of them. And I'm saying, I think I have that comic. I got to go check. So I'm there, and no lie, John, 25 minutes. I can't decide which one I want, but and then I can't decide whether. And then I'm looking at nice normal wallets, and I'm saying, I'm not 20. I'm not 14. I should probably walk out with a real wallet. Like, what are people going to think when I open up? It's bad enough I don't have money. I'm going to open up my wallet, right?
That's cool, brother.
So, and I already have a New England Patriots keychain, the whole thing. And you know what's cool about these, John? See, it has even a frame on each one like that.
God,
Isn't that neat?
That is cool, man.
So, did you see that in your kitchen? All right. I'm proud of my wallet.
Well, I turn on the
my whole show doesn't have to be intelligent. It can be, but anyway. So there's the dilemma. So I finally decide I'm going to pick one of these 4 Marvel wallets, and I thought it'd be easy. It was not easy. So I look at it and say, okay, the Hulk. I'm not built to. People are going to make fun of me if I have a Hulk thing. Thor, pretty cool, but a lot of people don't know Thor mainstream, and I'm looking at Thor. So instant, what I would have done is Spider-Man, because everybody loves Spider-Man. I love Daredevil, but nobody knows Daredevil. So I'm looking. I got Spider-Man. I'm going to buy the Spider-Man one, right? And it's bright red and yellow stripes all over it. Now it had the Spider-Man head, and it was beautiful, and it's sort of like retro distressed kind of thing. So I said, I think I can do that. But what won me over was the patriotic end of the America, Captain America, the shield, which to me is one of the best comic icons in history.
Oh yeah.
How many kids, you and I included, that made some sort of shield out of something?
Trash can lid.
I made, you know what? You know a sack of potatoes. You know the old sacks of potatoes that are red netting?
Yeah.
That was my Spider-Man web. We used to make that. We used to cut those out and we used to put those on. So we all did this. Everybody did a Superman cape. Everybody did all these kinds of things, and Ray DiCarlo, Razor. Everybody knows Razor. Has legitimized for me in my older years. We had a Hulk thing that was commercial that would come right out of the ceiling.
I know,
it was really cool.
I want that so bad.
You saw that?
Yes.
Yeah, that was cool. So he legitimized me being able to not, to come out of the closet with this. and Brad Meltzer, who I consider a friend, who's the author and everything, I've had on the show 100 times, and he's written some Justice League comics and things like that. Brad's a big, big, big fan.
Nice.
In fact, he was joking. They had a Superman trivia thing at a Barnes & Noble or something with his kid, and they said he felt guilty winning it because he knows all about it. But these people legitimized, even that's our mirror to put our makeup on. Ray found this at a 4th Avenue art thing. It's very cool. So once you realize it's okay, then you see everybody come out of the woodwork with this, with their stories, and now there's Comic-Con and all that, and it's big business.
The movies, brother.
So what is it about this that keeps people connected to it? Men, women, people of all. Now you talk about minorities. There was an African-American Iron Man, and now they came out with, I think the Green Lantern was gay. Or somebody's news is gay. It's probably not DC. I don't think DC goes that way. It's mostly Marvel. It would be edgier. But now there's somebody for everybody out there. A lot of women characters. What is it about it that keeps people attached even in their older years?
Well, I think it's, we're programmed. It's in our DNA to we worship, back in the days, we worship gods, these larger-than-life beings that would come down and do great acts of good, sometimes evil. But it's in our DNA. And then when superheroes came along, it's just, like Superman. I was reading this great article in Newsweek about Superman. And when he came along, these 2 Jewish kids playing in a barn, creating this guy that was going to come and fight the Nazis and, do these great acts for the good of the Jewish people. And it's that right there, is that exists in all of us, the want to do good, especially when we are being oppressed or we feel like we're being oppressed.
And the need to have heroes.
And the need to have heroes, the need to have someone or something to say, what would he do in this situation? And it's ironic. That's fueled me all my life. I don't drink, smoke, or do drugs, and it's largely because...
But you left your drugs in the bar at the... That's the old joke, sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't do that because of my appreciation for superheroes and because I read in an issue that Spider-Man didn't drink. And that along with I saw what it did to my people, but that just kind of sort of made it even, okay, man, I'm never going to touch alcohol in my life. And these superheroes, you never see them drunk or, in a disheveled condition like that. And it influenced me as a child where I was like, I want to be like my hero so much that I'm not going to drink. I don't ever want to be seen like that.
And you need something like that. And people can joke about comics and that kind of thing, but if you look at pop culture, there's, every star. I've had Lindsay Lohan's dad on the show, for example, you try to, as a young woman, and you look up to an actress like Lindsay Lohan. She did some early movies. She did a good job, all that. And then you watch them self-destruct. Yeah. And it's one after another, after another, after another. They're all in rehab. They're all in... So where do you... And the kids at that age, they don't have the wherewithal to understand that your mom should be your hero because she was a single mom, or that, some soldier that fought in the Gulf War should be the hero because of what he sacrificed. So they look for these kinds of role models, and they're terrible role models.
Yeah, unfortunately, motion picture stars are like, the American royalty. And I was a huge fan of Peter Sellers. And I mean, that guy, I worshipped him as an actor, and Gene Wilder. But Sellers, hugely into drugs and alcohol, and just probably one of the worst fathers out there because of a mental condition. And I get that. I get wanting to be like your stars. You want to experience it. It's because these people, they're on the big screen and they evoke something from us. And when somebody has that power to evoke any kind of emotion from you, you want that power too. You want to be able to do that too, because it feels like magic when somebody can make you happy, make you laugh, make you sad, make you feel something. You do. I mean, I live my life wanting to be one of those guys, and then when I started to work on films and you start to realize that they're human beings.
Yeah, it changes, it ruins it. It takes your innocence away.
Yeah, it does take your innocence away, and you see the movie magic, and that they're just people, man. They're just people wanting to do their craft, and they're no different than you and I.
No, and a lot of them do abuse substances, and some of them do it really not for a reason to party or anything. Some of them are introverted folks who are on such a publicity situation. I mean, they can't handle being...
You would be surprised how many of the stars that I worked with that are incredibly shy people. Like, they can be on a movie set and, be around the movie crew and everything, but you get them in public and they're just like...
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. was like that, wasn't he? He used to be at one time. In fact, he was a big abuse guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought he was never going to come back. And look at him now. And when people told me he was going to be Tony Stark, I said, what a perfect Tony Stark, man.
When I heard that, I was like, at first I was like, but then I was like, oh my, yeah.
Because he's even done the abuse thing, and he's arrogant.
That is Tony Stark.
And there have been, I had another guy on the show when the Hulk came out, Ed Norton. And he said that he was not a big comic book guy growing up. He couldn't believe how his life changed when he played
the Hulk,
the Hulk, and how everybody everywhere knew him and all that. So give me a quick rundown, and I want to talk about the film stuff later too, but give me a rundown on roles that worked and didn't work. I'll start with Spider-Man because, all right, first of all, let me back up a little bit. You're younger than I am, but I'm sure you know the culture enough that you've seen these. When finally Submariner and... All right, I'm sorry. I grew up Submariner. I guess some people say Submariner, right? When Submariner and Spider-Man and some of these guys got their first cartoon thing, it was like 4 p.m. on weekdays, and all it was a photo that moved like this. Do you remember that? And it was just Spider-Man. It was just terrible. But we were happy that they at least finally put it on. Oh, look, it's on TV, and we would get all excited about it. Who knew? I guess Razor knew because he built his business. Who knew that they'd be doing incredibly realistic and well-written films? I mean, I'm glad I lived to see it, to be honest, because they do a very, very good job. And now what? 4 out of 10 of the blockbuster films in any given year is some sort of superhero thing. Guys like you and Razor must be in your glory with that. So they come up with something like Spider-Man. So your first instinct when I watch it, wow, that is so cool. Oh, that's Doc Ock. That's how I pictured him. That's this, that's this, that's this. Then you get used to it, and you start getting judgmental about it. You know what? I think the Green Goblin would really have been played a little more subtly. So let me ask you. So the second Spider-Man comes along. Now I was already very happy. A little weird about the actor for the first Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, but he grew on me. And then when the second guy came, so without studying the second guy in the second film, I think I found him to be slightly more like the comic book in my head than the first one. But I want to see. Give me your feel about that and how they keep remaking the same Batman and Superman. I mean, which ones do you admire and which ones do you say that didn't work?
Wow, I mean, I really liked Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. I really did, because that's how I always envisioned him being this really, wimpy guy. Peter was this wimp.
Right.
I didn't like his portrayal of Spider-Man, though, because I wanted him to be a little more cocky, like the new one.
Yes.
In
the sarcasm and that kind of thing.
Yeah, Spider-Man was just so sarcastic, and that's how he pissed off so many supervillains because he was so snarky,
And we never met one that abused his power sarcastically like Spider. I mean, no one's ever done that, right?
Yeah, he was one of a kind, man. And I followed, his Saturday morning paper. Ray and I would literally cut them out of the paper. That's how big of geeks we were. And and the comic book and the Electro Company, anything that would come out, I just gobbled it up. But Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. I liked the first rendition of it. I really did. I was upset about the Goblin because I'm like, put a mask on that guy, a real mask, like a stretchy one where we can see his face. Uh, but yeah, and I like Doc Ock. I just this new guy, I can't. It's hard for me to get into him as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It really is because those are the nuances of these superheroes, like Superman. The new Superman, loved him as Superman, hate him as Clark. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
what
genius
happens a lot. Yeah.
behind Superman is the Clark Kent and Richard Donner, who did the Christopher Reeve Superman. He was smart enough to realize how important Clark was to the story.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, it doesn't matter if he looks like a great Superman. Can he be Clark? And that was one of the big holdups until Reeves came in and just blew him away with his version of Clark.
That
they knew he could do
bumbling
Superman,
kind of- yeah.
but can you do Clark? And he did it. And this one, that was one of the things I was kind of missing. And I realized this is a new version of Superman, a new kind of telling of it. But the old school me was like, I miss that whole Clark and Lois thing going on, you know?
Well, and I wish that they were a little bit less tongue-in-cheek sometimes, because I didn't really see that campy feel in some of the comics growing up as a kid, because you don't realize that. And they always seemed like they wanted to do things like that. Batman, the famous, what was it, 70s show, and always a
Adam
little bit
West.
silly, and and you know, you love it, but always a little bit silly. But the other side of the coin, which is no fun either, is when they get so dramatic and so serious that you don't enjoy the guy as a hero. Or you watch one of these, my son just watched one of them and said, you know what, he's never in costume, or he almost didn't even fight anybody. It just
Yeah.
turns into the relationship or whatever,
Yeah.
you know. I start getting judgmental about, like in the first Spider-Man, I'm like, I don't know that I would think, you know, Gwen Stacy would look that way, or you know. And I mean, she's an attractive actress and famous and everything, but you know, the girl in the comic book was gorgeous, and she's, you know,
Yeah.
you start getting really judgmental about all these characters. How about an ancillary character that you were really impressed with? Like Norm Osborn, I thought had a good face for Norm Osborn, for example.
Yeah.
And so, is there someone out there that you said, you know, whether it's the girlfriend of a hero or some guy like that you thought was fit perfectly?
Wow.
Like one of the girls is that was just in one of these is from Scottsdale, right? I
Really?
should think of her name. Anyway, yeah. But it's funny how attached you are and how you feel you know them. Like
Yeah.
was it like Mary Jane, right?
Yeah,
Mary
I
Jane's.
did not like What's Her Face's Mary Jane.
Yeah.
I was like, that is not Mary Jane.
Me
That's
too.
Not Mary
Me
Jane.
too.
Because I know her so well, and
Yeah.
you're dealing with that with the universe. And I thought J.J. Abrams did a great job with Star Trek, this new Star Trek, because
Oh, that's hard to do.
He paid homage to the original series, but then at the same time,
Was
it was
new
a
and
give and
different.
take. It was like, okay, I gave you this, now you guys got to give me this, and that's the smart way to do.
And they even had old Spock in it and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And-
McCoy, and you know, it was like, oh,
Well,
that's
because
so
you have a respect for how easily they could have blown it with somebody like a Jim Kirk. You mean you're really going to come up with another Jim Kirk? Like at least with Star Trek and Next Generation, they came up with a Shakespearean actor for Next Generation.
Yeah.
But to come back and say this guy was James T. Kirk as a kid with all his
Yeah.
cockiness and all that stuff, and they did it.
They
He
did
played a
it.
great character. I thought he did a very, very good job.
Yeah.
And it was on in the house the other day, and I was going by, and it was the scene where James Kirk cheated on the exam.
Oh, Kobayashi Maru.
You know, yeah. And I thought that was fantastic. I said, you know, that he would have done that. That
Yeah.
would, you know.
Well, it was legend in Star Trek that he had beat the Kobayashi Maru. He was the only guy who ever beat it, and they never really explained why. They said he cheated somehow, and it was cool the way he incorporated that into Star Trek. I was like, no way, they're gonna do the Kobayashi Maru, and I sound like a total geek right now.
Well, hey, you know what I have on? There's a clip right there, and I should have told you could have played it. Maybe I just moved it, I think, over to probably Jim Parisi show folder, but you can't play with that. There's a clip that I had to go get that's about Parisi squares. Do you know what Parisi squares is?
No.
Do you see it? All right. You know what? You can play that, right? Oh, if you think you can show it as well for the people who want to see it. This means nothing to anyone but Star Trek fans and me, because it's my last name. And I remember seeing it, and I said, some producer named Parisi must have forced that onto the show, because there's a game that they play, and they go into the holodeck or whatever they do, and they have this sort of weapon,
Yeah.
and they joust, and it's called Parisi squares. And they even put a moral to it in this particular episode, because the young kid got hurt playing Parisi squares, and the father's mad at him. And in this scene, the girlfriend of the father, Riker or whatever, says, how old were you when you started playing Parisi Squares? And it's pretty funny. Is it there? Are you going to try it? Well, at your leisure, and don't forget for us to hear it, you'll have to, and you can just put that to your head, John. Yeah, I can see it pop up in there now, and just make sure you pot it up a little bit on here so that John can hear it as well. Nope. Is it playing? Is it moving?
I was in the gym playing Parisi Squares.
Parisi
Yeah,
Squares?
there it is.
I fell off the ramp.
At your age, you could break your neck.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Continue the compression attenuator for another 2 minutes. Yes, doctor? Can I talk to you for a moment?
I'll be right back.
Will, how old were you when you first started playing Parisi Squares?
All right, I was probably a little younger than he is.
There you have it. All right. That comes out of nowhere. I don't even know why I had to play it, but it shows, I guess it speaks to how you are affected by things. I mean, people say to me, you've sat with presidents of the United States, the leader of the free world. You've done that a couple of times. That has to be your greatest accomplishment. I said, no, meeting Mickey Mantle was my great, So it's funny what gets
Yeah.
you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you, for people like you and Razor, sitting with Stan Lee would be just unbelievable, right? You've done it,
and
right?
I've met Stan.
I knew you
briefly
have.
When
See-
Tribal Force first came out, and I showed him, and when he saw my name tag, he's like, "You look pretty good for being a dead X-Man." I was like, "Thanks, brother." And I go, "I just wanted to show you this and say thank you because obviously, your comic books were the inspiration for all this." And he was just really super enthusiastic, cool guy. He's everything you want him to be.
He's still like a child inside.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
he has
like that uncle, that cool uncle you can't wait for to come over, because he's gonna probably tell you dirty jokes and bring
Well,
over cool toys.
And in his mind somewhere were all these stories.
That is
You know?
amazing. Like, what is going on in that head of yours, dude?
And he did such a good job. And there's so many people all around the world. And people, let's be honest about it. People have tried to pull this off. I mean, there have been so many. I was one of those idiots buying the first issue all the time of a lot of these where one of the artists would spin off and they would do some and it just never really grabbed ground. All right, let me complain for a minute about comics. In my world, and I'm sure it coincides with me getting busy in television news and not being able to follow the genre for a while, but there had to be 10 years that I would pick up a Marvel comic, hate the artwork, not like the storyline, and throw it down. And I didn't buy, if you look at my collection at the time, and I don't have that many books anymore, I had like every one, then nothing, then back to, because I just didn't like it.
Yeah, the art was like not there, or the story wasn't there, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. Or my buddy Mike Sosa and I, he's also a local DJ, or was a DJ here in Tucson, huge comic book fans, and we were big fans of John Byrne and Terry Austin's X-Men, Chris Claremont. And then when another artist took over, I was livid. I mean, it had messed with the foundations of my reality. And I tried to continue to buy the book, and I just couldn't. And I just stopped buying them until a new artist came in that I liked.
Because you'll see facial expressions that your character would not make.
Yeah.
Exaggerated, over the top, cartoonish expressions that just rub you the wrong way.
Yeah, if the writer isn't handling certain characters correctly. Like, my big pet peeve in the Marvel Universe is Doctor Doom. Byrne or Claremont, knows how to write Doctor Doom. There's a certain way you have to write that guy. And if you see him doing something out of character, you're like, and you just put the book down. It's like, I'm not reading this.
And he had, in his mind, he wasn't all evil. He was.
No, he was a leader.
Right,
he was
right.
He was the leader of Latveria, and he was a royal on top of that. And he had this certain attitude, and he knew what was best for his country, and no one else did or does. And they made a really good point of that because in one of the Fantastic Four, it might have been issue 250 or 300. 250.
A milestone issue.
Yeah, and Reed Richards helps overthrow Doom from Latveria. And then, 10, 15 issues later, they go back and revisit Latveria, and it's a mess, and it's crime-ridden. And, Doom ruled with an iron fist, and there was no crime in the city.
For good and bad. Yeah, that's what's always, Marvel was never black and white like DC was, good and evil. And I mean, the Red Skull, and you had all the Americana, Captain America. Could you have a more patriotic character and name, and guy from old school? In fact, the Avengers I loved. I hope you liked the Avengers. And all the references of Captain America being so naive and you know, from the old days.
You're like, who is this
Yeah,
guy?
you know, because he was so pure. And I think they did that so well, and they've done issues where people had drug abuse, and obviously Iron Man, they were alcoholics, and your main character would wrestle with these things. Peter Parker was the first guy who couldn't get a date because he was kind of nerdy, and I mean, they
couldn't
dealt
pay
with
his
issues
rent.
that couldn't pay his rent. I mean, when did Superman, did you ever hear, unless you came up with a chunk of kryptonite, you know, Superman was good, you know?
Well, that was the only time he was in peril, and Parker's life was all about peril. Like, here he's fighting these great supervillains, and then he comes to his apartment and the landlord's banging on his door because he hasn't paid the rent, or he missed a class at school, or Aunt May hasn't seen him, or something's wrong with her health, and you're like, man, can this guy get a break?
Well, the football player's beating on him at school or something
being
like that,
picked on,
right?
you know, because he's a nerd, or, you know, all this great stuff, all this minutia that makes a really, really vivid, true-to-life story, because this is something that every human being goes through, unless you're super uber wealthy and you don't have to worry about anything.
And then you have other issues, because there's always some kind of issues. All right, before I segue into some other things that you do in your life, what do you do now with the comic world? Are you still keeping the issue alive? Are you looking at a new venture? What are you doing?
Yeah, actually, we just got signed. I can't say who yet because they told me not to announce it yet, but we just got picked up.
You mean by somebody that we might recognize? If we
No,
are?
no, it's a small-time publisher. It's their kind of first venture into comic books, so I'm pretty excited about that. Tribal Force will be the flagship of, you know, all their books. And I mean, we literally just signed the contract a couple of days ago.
And he's going to give the name right now. No, you can't
Yeah.
do that. And very cool though. And I don't want to lose that or spill something on it. But these people, when they sign you, give me a comparison what it's like to be an author of a regular novel, for example, and get signed by a publisher, and something like this. I mean,
Wow,
you know.
you get money up front, you get a signing bonus, you get all this cool
Oh, you're not
stuff
getting all that.
No.
But what do? They pay for the printing of the issues?
Yeah,
and
they're
things?
going to pay for all the stuff that normally I couldn't do. They're going to advertise, they're going to, you know, send me to cons, and they're going to publish the book and do a little bit of merchandising, and we're going to get some, you know, models to do cosplay, different things that I don't have in my resources. I'm just a dude in Tucson. And if I'm lucky, I can put that book out, and it takes me. I'm a very slow artist, so it would have probably taken me another 6 to 8 months to finish the next issue. And they're going to hire a professional artist, and he's incredible. I saw the kid's art, and I'm just like, wow. And
Now I saw some of your stuff. You sent me a link or whatever. Some of that artwork, is that this guy? Is that the future guy?
That's all me. I drew it and inked it, and
So
Gabe
you did all of
Armenta-
this?
Yeah, and Gabe Armenta colored it, and Greg Menino, a local guy, helped do some of the computer effects and different things like that. But yeah, for the longest time, I couldn't find an artist, and finding an artist for Tribal Force is one of the most difficult things because of its Native American aspect, and trying to explain to somebody certain little nuances that belong to, each
The
character's from
culture,
a different
yeah.
tribe. Little Bighorn is Oglala Sioux. Earth she's Navajo. Audie, the wooden bird guy, he's Quacutal. I got another one coming in called Jaguar Knight, who's Aztec, like from 500-600 years ago. And each tribe, everything means something on their costume.
Sure.
And people tend to want to put feathers on natives all the time, and I'm like, no feathers. And feathers are something that are earned in battle, and each tribe has a way that they cut the feathers when you do things in battle. Like if you count coup, if you take an enemy, if you take an enemy's pony, and the feathers mean something, and it's like, our medals, the military medals.
And you would be able to look at someone and know exactly what he had done.
Yeah.
Now, how do you hand off? Say you first of all, you can't do everything forever. It's like
Yeah.
me, I like running my own audio, but if I want to have a good show, I need someone like Danielle, so I can concentrate. So you have to break it up when you get bigger. So that's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you tell me that you don't, have to let them pry the artwork out of you, because you're going to see a guy who might draw better than you.
Yeah.
But you're still going to say, that's not how it was in my head. And you got to wrestle with that in a delicate manner,
You got to
right?
give some leeway to the artist, because if you're on the artist's back every single day, it's just going to become too daunting for any creative type to want to do that, to have some guy whispering in your ear every 5 seconds. So I'm trying to be as cool as I can, but at the same time, if there's something very important to me, especially when it comes to culture of the book. I've got to say something. You know, if the characters don't look native, I'm gonna tell them, dude, you need to make them look more native, or that shouldn't be there, or a lot of the symbols on their clothing are sacred. Like Thunder Eagle carries the ghost dance symbol on his chest, and that was from the Paiute medicine man Waboka, and that's sacred. So I can't have anybody reformatting it or changing it to look cooler or anything like that. It's like, no. And that's one of the things we discussed in the contract was that, you know, it's got to be like this. There's certain things in the book that have to remain this way. And the publishing company that I am dealing with, they're really super cool as far as that aspect goes. They were really generous with me in that respect.
So how long have you gone without an issue, and when's the next one coming out?
Wow, I think
it's been years, right?
No, I released this one, the 0 issue, at the Tucson Comic Con last year. So
okay.
Getting close to a year.
Well, that's nothing, though. No, I mean, that's not. It's better than 10 years.
Yeah, no. Before that, it was quite some time. It was like '96 before Tribal Force had seen the light of day, and I'd put a couple of ash cans out or something, you know. But it was just limited release, so it wasn't really getting out there.
So you're super excited about this?
Yeah, I'm on pins and needles because I made this promise a long time ago, and getting to follow through with it makes me feel really good. And you know, every warrior picks a battle, or the battle finds a warrior, and mine is I'm combating child molestation on reservations, and I feel we can eradicate that in the next 10 years, and this is my contribution to that battle. So hopefully we can really make a dent with that.
I thought it was all just funny books. No? Hey, all right, let me segue into, what's this actor stuff that I'm seeing on IMDb?
Yeah.
You've been in a few films?
Yeah, I've done a couple of movies. Just something I've always wanted to do. I hate being told no. And as a child, friends telling me, oh, you'll never be able to do that because, you know, you're Indian, or you look the way you look and you don't look like a movie star. And then something goes off in my head where I'm like,
oh, yeah?
Really? Yeah, watch me. And I just started, you know, I found out where a film was and got on set as an extra, started bugging people and asking, you know, how do I become one of those guys in front of the camera? And, you know, a couple of directors said, you know, you need to take classes, you need to learn how to act, so on and so forth, which I did. I went to Hollywood, studied out there, and I started landing roles. I snuck into my first big audition for a movie called Madhouse with John Larroquette and Kirstie Alley. And I snuck in, and I got all the way to the director. As soon as I walked through the door, he looks at me, and he's like, did you lie to get in here? And I'm like, yeah, I did. I go, can I still audition? And he's like, sure. So I said my line. My line was shoot him. And I said the line, and I got the part. And it was really cool because the company had to go through a process called Taft-Hartley, which is when you hire an actor who's not Screen Actors Guild, you have to pay kind of like a fine to hire that actor, which they did. And I got my Screen Actor Guild card, SAG card, on that film. And, you know, just it's always been a dream of mine, you know, to do these things. That I grew up with my grandmother off of 22nd and 3rd Avenue, and it was kind of sort of a poor environment, you know, and you see the haves and the have-nots, and you hear these stories about, you know, like I heard stories about my cousins and relatives that almost went to Major League Baseball or almost became
a lot of almosts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be one of those almosts. I just didn't. And I saw that alcohol was a part in stopping some of them from achieving their goals. So that's another reason I didn't want to drink or do drugs. And I don't know. I just want to do those things that I saw as a child, and I didn't know it was a job until my grandmother told me. Like, I was a huge fan of Clark Gable when I was a kid, and I'm like, who is this guy? You know? I asked my grandmother, is this real, or is what's happening here? And she's like, no, it's. And the way she explained it to me was, she goes, it's like when you go outside to play. That's what it is.
And you play acting or whatever.
Yeah, and I was hooked. I was like, they get paid for that? To go out and play all day? And I was hooked. I'm like, that's the job I want. And it was tough because my dad was ex-Marine Corps. He fought in World War II, took 5 islands, Iwo Jima, Saipan, Tinian, Nuremberg, took Mount Suribachi where they put the flag up. He was a sniper scout
Wow.
You know, he was also a deputy sheriff here in Tucson. First recorded lawman to cross the borders into Mexico and return stolen goods. He was on the cover of Detective Magazine, so you know he was this
You had
giant.
big shoes to
yeah, he was this giant of a man that I was living in his shadow. And when I told him that I wanted to be an actor, he was like,
Uh-oh.
you know, yeah, like get serious. You need.
Oh,
to
don't
get
worry.
real."
That or comic books. Yeah, that must have went over really well.
Oh boy, did it ever, man. He was, because you know, he was blue collar. He worked for Hughes Aircraft, and so he was very much, you know, get a job, earn, you know, have a check coming in every week.
But you got to chase your dreams, man. I mean, when I run into young people, I always say, you know, somebody say 14, 15, 16 years old, and I'll say, what's your dream? And they'll say, I'm going to be an accountant for it. Now, first of all, don't write me. If you're an accountant out there, don't write me an email. And I want to be an accountant. And I'll say, that was your dream? Like, you know, that's a noble profession. But well, you know, I wanted to be a dancer, but I mean, I know that you can't really. No, wait. Like, don't say I know that you can't do that. I got teased about having the Northeast Rhode Island Italian accent my whole life and everything. And then they paid me money to voice things and all that.
Nice.
You know, you never know, right?
You don't. You really
So
don't.
you can't stop the dream. And your dad, I'm sure, appreciated that you grew up to be a respectful young man who doesn't do drugs and alcohol and that kind of thing. And that's what really matters.
He got really excited when I landed Walker, Texas Ranger. I played Walker's nephew in the series, and that was his favorite show. So when I told him I was going to be on the show, he was beside himself.
You finally hit what Dad respects.
Yeah.
It's tough to do that.
And then I brought him an autograph photo from Chuck, who was an incredible guy. Chuck Norris, nicest celebrity ever. And I brought the videotape of the episode. And here's the hilarious thing. I bring the videotape to my dad. It's videotape back then. And I go to his VCR to put it in. And he's like, no. I'll do that.
He didn't even want you to mess it up. Like,
Yeah, he didn't trust me
You're-
to set the VCR.
fathers are the same way.
Yeah.
I took when my dad was turning 70, and we were having a surprise birthday party for him, and he's passed on since. And right before that, coincidentally, I was going to get my first interview with the sitting president. It was President George Bush Sr. So I'm doing the interview, and I know it's not cool. You know, you're in the acting world. I had a bit part in a movie, and I sat with Nick Nolte, and I wasn't going to, on the ride back, and I wasn't going to be a fan. You just
Yeah.
keep your mouth shut. You leave him
Yeah.
alone. You know, you don't want to look like a newbie or whatever. So I'm in there, you know, with the president. I'm doing the interview. It's going very well. It's a long form interview, 15, 20-minute interview. The whole time I'm saying, how do I ask him to wish my dad a happy birthday at the end of this without looking like an idiot, you know?
Yeah.
So you got to seize the moment, as you
Yeah.
know. And you did the same thing. It's like, okay, it might not be cool, but if I go home, I'll regret it forever. So the end of the interview, I said, look, Mr. President, I know this isn't kind of cool, but could you say happy birthday to my father? Kind of. So, and it's in there too, but you don't have to find it unless you know where it is. It's a short Bush clip. And here's how politicians are, and even nice guys. I mean, say what you want politically about these guys or whatever.
Yeah.
He says the Secret Service is there. It's just he and I, and we're in a schoolroom, and we shut all the doors, and the Secret Service and I are there, and we're doing this interview. I did a couple of them in 1 week, and Secret Service, everybody getting up and everything, and he says, "Give me a second. We're going to do something." And he puts, he gets ready, and he puts on a fake, and I don't mean it in a bad way, political, caring face, and he says, "Sam, sitting here with Jim, tough interview, good questions." And he's doing this whole, and he goes through this thing that's a minute long. If the Bush family's like the Parisi family, we value our kids and many more things. He goes through this whole thing, and then at the end he goes, "Okay, done. Okay," and he goes, right? So I bring the tape. I'm like a little kid, and I'm 32 years old, but I feel like I'm 14 again, going to impress Dad finally, right?
Yeah.
Old school, kind of dad, blue collar. So we make a birthday tape, and we're in this his birthday party, and everybody goes around with a little camera then, and they all wish Uncle Sam or whatever a happy birthday, and they all do that, and they put it all together, and their thing was that they were going to play this tape in front of my dad, so he's there in front of the TV, and there's all the relatives around him, and he's 70, so he's got a lot of family who loves him, blah, blah, blah. So you see the nieces and the nephews and the sisters and the brothers. "Hi, Sam, happy birthday. You're always one of my favorite uncles." In the middle of all this blue-collar, no one's ever gotten out of the little town thing,
Yeah.
the sitting president of the United States pops on the tape and says, "Sam, I'm here with Jim. So the first thing he's thinking is this trick photography some kind of thing?
Yeah.
So he's watching. Now, everybody knows the story except him. And he's there, and he goes to Sam, if anything like that, and people are blown away in the room, and little Jimmy, I'm so proud that I'm impressing my dad. And he turns, and everybody wants to hear what he's going to say, and he says, still not voting for him. That was his quote. So, you can't impress Dad. I mean, I guess you need Texas Walker. Only Chuck Norris.
Yeah,
Chuck Norris, even bigger than a president, can impress your dad. But you know what? That generation, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they were special people.
They were special. And I just can't even imagine. I had an uncle who joined the military at 14 or 15. He signed up, and then midway through
And what,
boot
they
camp,
lie about their age to get in?
They found out how old he was, and they sent him away. And then he came back at 17. But just that, like, who does that? 14-year-old kid in the military wanting to go and fight for your country. And my father signed up very young, and he was on the beaches of Iwo Jima at 18, taking lives, and he never spoke about it.
I found the Purple Heart in my dad's sock drawer.
Wow.
And I asked him about it, and he said, I just I get hit by shrapnel. I didn't deserve that. They always played it down.
Yeah.
This generation, if you're a football player and you just do a routine tackle, you're doing a dance and going through and then that
On the
generation,
cover of Time
man.
magazine.
Yeah.
But that generation was just, those were real men. And, and that also influenced me, my father's perseverance. And whenever things are tough on me, or what I perceive as tough, I think back to what he went through and what members of my tribe went through, the Basquiat, losing 17,000 members on their trek into America. Well, it wasn't America at the time.
And then you have the world cornered on persecution, because you have the three probably most famously persecuted,
Yeah, no, trust me. As I do the research, I'm very proud of all, the races that I'm comprised of. The Latino, the Yaqui, the Jewish, the Mexican. Everything inspires me to do better, for my people, and to know that I came from such a great lineage. I feel this overwhelming debt to those people that I owe them, because I'm here. For whatever reason, all the stars in the universe aligned for me to be here today, alive and able to do this and bring these messages out. So,
and to get the joy that you're getting and still feel that you're doing something worthwhile.
Oh yeah, man.
And that's what your legacy will be. That not only that you started this kind of book and that kind of thing, but that you are doing something that and all the corny cliches can come in. If you just stop one episode of abuse, or if you just save one kid or enlighten one kid to speak up, and I read just a couple of pages. I just glanced at that, and I looked online and everything, and it's basically giving people the strength to say, you're not touching me anymore. I mean, that's what it's about.
And hopefully it'll create something in a child to speak out and say, hey, I read this book and this is happening to me, and that's where it is. That's where the people who are perpetrating these crimes depend on the children staying silent. And it's a tough dichotomy to deal with, because most molesters were molested themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me to feel sympathy for them, and I'm just going to be honest, man. I can't work with perpetrators of molestation, and I'm not going to sit here and say something good about them. But at the same time, if we could install some programs that would work with the perpetrators of molestation and break that part of the cycle, that's a part of it too. Personally, if I was in charge, I would just lock them all up, and just take them away. But I know that's not the answer, and that's why I'm not a politician, but at the same time, it's all about healing, and I understand that part of it, and my job is to help the kids. That's what I'm here for.
Well, and what you're doing is fantastic, and I want you, before you go, to say where people can learn more about this, and I want to thank you for not only the inspirational story of this, but the inspirational story about Razor being this bully crushing tough guy when he's a kid.
Did we say that on air?
Did we not say that? We really should.
We did.
I know Ray well enough to say that on the air. I describe Ray as one of the most soft-spoken human beings I've ever worked with or met in my life. Nothing can raise an emotion out of Ray. Hey, Ray, the building just blew up. Yeah, blew right up.
Oh,
yeah,
Captain of Cool.
Man. Yeah, always. And I look back, and I always saw him as just quiet. Then I looked at the pictures, and he was this cool, like, surfer dude-looking guy with
Oh
the
yeah,
long hair.
in
and everything,
elementary
right?
school, I was a grade below him, and you know, he would to us, he was like the Hulk. He was the biggest thing we had ever seen, and whenever kids would pick on me, you know, here would come Ray, you know, and just throw
Did Ray
everyone
get in
away.
fights? Did he?
Not necessarily
But he would
fights.
just
it was
come
just
to
his
stick up to you.
size, you know, and then he would throw kids, toss them across the
Really?
the
Man, I'm
field.
just so fascinated by this.
And they were just because he was a big kid, man, you know. And so people left me alone by that. And the only reason Ray protected me was I was one of the few comic geeks, you know, in school at
Wow.
that time. And, you know,
So
we
that's
shared
why
that.
he's soft-spoken, because he could afford to be, because he was a big guy, so
Oh,
he didn't
yeah.
nobody messed with him.
Yeah. I never saw anyone go near that giant. I
And
was
I-
just glad he was my friend.
And I've never seen him. Have you ever seen him riled up? I've seen him, you know, teed off a couple of times, but even that was pretty subtle.
No, I've never seen him. Even
Or a
back
belly
then.
laugh or anything. I mean, he's a laid back, you
He's
know.
very laid back, very, you know, just one of the coolest cats I've ever met, you know, and I definitely, I mean, he influenced me when I was younger, you know, I wanted to be like Ray when I was in elementary school, and when he went off to junior high, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm the new Ray. Here. He was just a cool cat, man. I'm glad he's around, and just seeing that, and he's got a really cool family, and when I did a couple of shows that he did, it was just really neat being around the guy, you know, because he's just so cool to talk to, and whenever I'm around him, I feel like, you know, we're back to being 12 years old again.
Yeah.
It's that same fervor of talking about comic books and, you know, geeking out on toys and different things that come out. We're back in the 70s, man.
Well, Ray is funny, and I don't know if I said this. I don't think I said it on there. But people who follow the shows, Ray doesn't go to sleep ever. I mean, ever. And he's not a party guy. He just doesn't sleep. So I can text Ray, and I was saying this earlier. He's the only guy on my whole phone list
Yeah.
that I don't even check the time. If something happens that I want to tell Ray, just tell, and he'll answer right there. And I'm like, are you ever in bed? But anyway, hey man, tell people where, if they want to support Tribal Force, if they want to see you on IMDb or anything like that. Why don't you get that out there, John?
Well, definitely you can find me on Facebook. My name on there is John Santanta, Proud Star. And we don't have a venue yet of where we're going to be releasing it, but please talk to your comic book shops. Let them know that Tribal Force is going to be coming out, and to start looking for it in the next couple of months.
Very, very cool. And when this goes worldwide and you're really, you know, kicking butt, say yes when I invite you back on the show, because or get me in at Comic-Con in San Diego. Let's do San Diego. Okay?
Yeah, San Diego, baby.
You know, my pleasure, man. It's great to meet you. I can't believe I didn't text Ray and say that you were coming, because I didn't know if you guys were still, like, you know, close or whatever. But now I should text Ray and say, hurry up over here. Someone's trying to beat up John. You know?
Yeah, he'll show up like
And
the
he'll
Hulk
come
through
down.
the wall.
Hey, man, thank you. Thanks for coming by. And anytime you need anything, you know, give us a buzz. Or if something happens, like you get some sort of new medal for the work you're doing or something, give us a buzz.
Fantastic.
And we'll come and say hi to you. John Proud Star. And I'm not going to try to say the middle one. Santanta.
Hey,
Close?
you got it. You got it.
All right,
man.
there you go, man. Thank you. My pleasure. Hey, if you want to call in on anything in the world, now's the time to do it. And before we take a break, you can jump in at 750-7456, and Danielle will pick up the phone for you. Danielle, do I have any kind of a tape of any kind of what John probably doesn't know is a marathon show. We're doing 8 straight hours, no commercial breaks. So the only way I could even get up and warm up the coffee is to play a clip of somebody back there. We have Bob Saget. Bob Saget's funny. All right.
You know,
We'll
get
do
it
Bob
done.
Saget.
When you were
And
22
this is
years
probably about 4 or 5 years old. When you hit the button, I'll shut up. How's that? There you go. We'll be right back.
old, what were you doing?
Completely. I had just moved out from Philadelphia. I graduated Temple University. I'd done comedy in Philly and some in New York at the Improv. I would wait in line 10 hours to go do amateur night. Ended up at the Comedy Store and became one of the house MCs there for like 7 years. So we started by getting no pay. And when I started, it was 1978, the people on stage were Letterman and Robin Williams and Billy Crystal and Leno, and Richard Pryor would go up, and Johnny Carson would drop in and do guest spots. You know, it was just
Amazing.
a great, booming comedy time.
You're sort of one of the last of the classics, Bob. I know you're not an old guy, but the names that you're naming, that's old school comedy.
It's the guys that became all the stars we have now.
Could you have been on Saturday Night Live as a writer or something, or did you have any
No,
interest in that?
I guessed it on there one time.
And that was
just
about
one
it.
time, but it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I've just known a lot of different people in comedy my whole career because I get drawn toward anybody really funny, and they don't have to be dirty. You know, some of my favorite comics are they never curse at all, and some of my favorite comics are so filthy you can't even stand it.
And then some of them, like Richard Pryor, were both at different times of their life.
Yeah, and he's one of the first people I ever got to work with. I did a movie called Critical Condition, and I got it on an open audition, and I ended up with a really nice part and hung out with Richard for a month and became kind of friendly with him.
And now you're directing, and you're doing a lot of work. You know, and you always think people are a little out of the limelight, and then you IMDb them or whatever, and you say, oh, this guy's like busier now than he ever was. He's just not in front of the cameras often.
Well, there's more in front coming up now. That's the other thing, because I've got all these different. I just did an NBC show, which October 13th, I believe, is the date of this show called 1 versus 100.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
I call it a game show, but it's a quiz show because I'm trying to stay true to the old school version of what those shows were. So it's a little bit like You Bet Your Life would be if he had a giant audience. So it's one person, and across from us is 100 people, all contestants. So it's and I can talk to anybody I want, and there's no script, and I really, really like that.
Well, let me ask you why you still do these tours, because obviously you don't have to. You're very busy. You're getting paid. You're successful. You've done about everything you can do.
Right.
Is there a rush about it? Is it something contractual? And be honest, why do you still tour around?
It's a religious belief. No, that's not what it is. It's actually I truly love it, and it has been the thing that has helped me find what is arty fruity as this might sound. My comedic voice does sound weird, but it's true. The audience, the people, have really kind of shown me which direction I should go in and what I should do. And when I'm on stage, and I'll be in Tucson at Centennial Hall.
This
hope
weekend.
You can come to the show, by the way.
Oh, everybody listening is going to come to the show.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's October 21st. You know.
October 21st, everybody.
Yeah, you're there, right? You're in the front row, right?
I'll be there. Will you remember me?
Are you kidding? I'm
Yeah.
going to have you right on the stage on my lap.
All right, last one. Who influenced you, Bob? Because you got a unique style, and you still do, and you got a nice lap too. But that's a whole different. But who influenced you? You had to pick one name. Who you really think was just the funniest person, and you kind of. I know you guys never steal from each other, but where you got a little influence.
I would probably say Rodney Dangerfield, because he just kind of guided me along sometimes. As many issues as he had, I had plenty on my own, and maybe wasn't always appreciative of things that had been happening. And he was very, very supportive of young comedians. And I got pretty close with him. I actually officiated his funeral. And,
Wow.
So he was a guy that just kind of said, go out and kill him for an hour. Do it like you're punching a body bag. Don't stop. Just keep hitting and hitting and hitting. And you got good jokes, you can blow the roof off. And the idea being, you come out and you're not just there just to do okay or to make people laugh or just have them titter for a little while. That's not a good word, but it is a word.
Yeah, no, he took it seriously.
I love performing. It's like, for me, it's like going out on the ocean with a surfboard, throwing it down, and just going out. You just catch a wave, and you're gone for an hour.
Last question for you before I let you go. We never hear about your personal life. Do you have a family?
I have an ex-wife of 9 years. I have 3 beautiful daughters who are 19, 16, 13. I got 2 older parents who are 89 and 81. I had a dog. That's I'm going to be doing a couple minutes on him. And I have a new girlfriend who we don't talk about because it makes too many of the people that I know want to make prenup documents written.
True, and she's probably very young, and we don't want to go there. So
she's wonderful. Everybody wants to go there.
And that's a line that you can't really get away with saying, but he said it, and it was funny anyway. I want to thank everybody for. If you're still listening to the show, then you know that you've loved some guests, didn't love some guests, because there's all kinds of people that we've had on the show. And let's see. We're in our 5th hour. We're almost done with our 5th hour. So very cool for you guys to be there. Learned a lot myself and the people that we've talked to so far. We have, and we'll see how well we pull off the rest of the show, because to be honest with you, it's going to be tough to not be able to get food. I think I'm going to end up sending out for Pizza Hut or Domino's. See, I can't say Domino's because Pizza Hut will be upset. Pizza Hut, Domino's, or Pizza, what's that one, Caesar's, and we'll figure out something. Anyway. Very interesting to have the different types of people that we've had on the show so far today. And Jay Dobbins, Ricky Ellison, the folks that we've had in studio. John Proudstar, just now. Very interesting guy. And, tell a quick story. while Danielle is doing her thing. John has a limited edition number 0 Tribal Force comic that he just gave to me as for coming in the studio. So very, very cool. And he even said, modestly, that'll be worth some money someday because it was a limited edition, all that. And I said, no, John, it's only worth money if the person actually ever sells it, but I would never sell it, so it's only going to be sentimental value for me. Thank you. And I made him sign it. I said, if you don't sign it, I'll get Ray. And Ray will smack you. You're never going to hear me ever stop teasing Ray about the story I heard today. So that it was worth it to have John in here just for the Ray story. And Proud Star Entertainment put out this comic book. But it reminds me of the story of Bob Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, and when he met the Russian leader, and the Russian leader took his Super Bowl ring, looked at it, and then he put it in his pocket, and he left with it. And it was almost a scandal, and Kraft wanted it back, and our government called Bob Kraft and said, look, let him keep the ring, we'll make you a new one, whatever it takes, but you can't start an international, battle over Putin taking your ring. So it was it went on a couple of years ago. This was a couple of years ago. And now it surfaced again because Kraft wanted to tell the true story, which is that our own government called them and said, don't ask for your ring back. They were intimidated by the Russian leader and didn't want to do anything about it. So now the Russian leader came out and said, we'll make you a beautiful ring and all that. Well, it's still not the same thing, right? This is the one that he had won as a Super Bowl team owner. But why do I tell the story? Well, John brings in this beautiful comic book and hands it to me and said, I want you to see what my work is all about. And he illustrated this one himself and everything. Well, I don't know that he was giving it to me to keep. So I kept doing this subtle thing where I looked at it and I kept putting it back towards John. Right, Danielle? And I kept putting it back towards John, and John wasn't taking it. So then I put it even a little bit more toward John when the interview was ending, and I left it there. And I said, well, if he picks it up, then he was being kind to show it to me, but it's too valuable for him. I don't know how that works. So then he's leaving the building, and Danielle wasn't here, so I couldn't say anything. And he's going out of the building, and I said, John, is that comic for me? And he said, yes, sir, I brought that for you and all that. And I said, oh, okay. And I told him the Patriots story, and we laughed about it. But funny how that's why I like interacting with people in life. It's that, I don't want to say it's awkward, but it's the interesting human element. And this is what I want to bring to the show. Those are the moments in life, right? Am I supposed to grab the book? Am I not supposed to grab the book? I mean, there's more entertainment that goes on just ordering the right Starbucks or something or whatever you're doing. Do I say it this way? Am I supposed? If I say, cafe, what's the big one? Is that Grande or is it Casa Grande? It gets complicated, but it's a lot of fun. And then in life, you have situations where you try to be funny, and Val's always warning me about this. Some people know my sense of humor, and so they go, oh, yeah, that's Jim saying that or whatever, being irrelevant. I've been irrelevant, too, or irreverent. And I go to speak at the FBI Academy, and I caught the FBI doing something. I'm gonna diss the FBI on my first show. So, I'm in the class of the FBI, and I don't speak. And we're doing 3-hour classes. It was every Thursday night, Citizens Academy. If you just joined the show, Jay Zucker had nominated me. You get to nominate one person when you leave the academy and all that. Thought it would be cool. It was very hard because it was 3 hours without moving, and I'm a hyper person and just sitting there, So sitting here for 8 hours, even better. But I don't speak. So I would go to the class, and I would literally not speak. It would be like in a college class, and other people are asking a million questions and all that, and I'm not saying anything. So near the end of the 8-week course, they say that they need a spokesperson from Tucson to, when we go up in Phoenix and we get our diploma, the FBI thing, that they're going to give a little speech. So they say, we'd like people who have an interest in that to please put their name forward, and we'll pick one of you, and we'll do that. Well, I don't put my name in. I almost don't speak for the whole 8 weeks. And they come up to me and say, you've been nominated, so you're the guy who's giving the speech. I'm flattered, I think, but unless it was because no one else would do it, so you're going to make me do it. Well, before I say something really nice about the FBI on the speech, I always have to be funny or at least joke a little bit about it so that you lighten up the mood, and then you say the real serious thing. So I start the speech, and I pull out a card out of my pocket, and I say, I'm honored here to speak to the CIA. Dead silence. And I pull out another card. I'm sorry, the NSA. Dead silence. Then by the time I pulled out Homeland Security and, a couple other agencies that I pulled, I'm surprised I didn't come out with the Boy Scouts. Then I heard a couple of little chuckles. But then it worked out okay, and the speech went very well, and it was very well received, and I was happy I did it. But it's a dangerous game to try to be funny in a room full of FBI agents. I mean, it took a second. I know for that 1 second, half of those agents said, "What an idiot Parisi is. He thinks he's at the CIA breakfast or whatever." Anyway, so I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope that as we play these podcasts, you get a kick out of some of the people that we've been lining up for you. Tried to keep it non-political today, so we're not going to get into a lot of politics. If you just joined us and you haven't been following the news, Janet Napolitano announced that she's stepping down as the head of Homeland Security, the secretary, and she'll be taking a job running university system in California. So that's in September. She'll be doing that. So that's the big news today. And in a community, people always say you want to do talk in this community and nothing ever happens. Well, not only the tragedies that happen, I mean, how about these poor firefighters that lost their lives, and how about the Giffords situation? We've had them between Davis Mountain, our own university stuff here. I mean, there's a lot here. There's a lot here for a moderately sized community. Tucson's deceiving because Tucson's one of the larger cities, even though the greater Tucson area isn't necessarily one of the largest markets. If you're in TV and radio, everything's by market size. So Providence, where I was born, is a larger market, but Tucson as a city is larger than Providence as a city, and Tucson's larger than many big cities out there. So we have this hybrid going on, and it begs the question: how do you perceive it? You heard John talking about people still think that they, have feathers in their hair, the Native Americans and everything. Well, people also think in Tucson you're riding horses and doing things like that, though I must confess that pulling out of my driveway the other day and heading out across the street, some guy rode right by me on a horse. It happens all the time. Danielle's looking at me funny. We had this Mexican dude, and I'm not saying, an American. He clearly, if he were American, then he just got here yesterday. And he was right out of the best movie you could ever see. I had to take pictures of him. Even took some video of him. That's how cool he was. He was riding without the saddle thing, and he had his head tilted like you see in the movies, and the giant sort of sombrero-ish thing. And he was going off at a slow pace on the dirt road we're on. He's just going. And I would see this guy almost every day going home. And I was so fascinated by him that, me and my big mouth, I had to pull up and try to talk to him. So he didn't speak English, but he was going near my house, so we pulled over, and he came up on the horse, and he was right out of every movie you could ever. Fantastic character. He had the ruddy face, from the sun, and just amazing. 3 minutes in, he's talking to Val, Samantha, and they're talking different language. They don't know what and Samantha's riding on the horse with the guy, and he's going in a little circle, and he's walking the horse all gentle. And Tucson's amazing. You just you never know what's around the corner, but it's a very, very cool place. So we hope you support our efforts to get a real radio station. I will say this much. I can't say call letters, and legitimately, we're not playing games with it. There are two reasons we don't want to say too much. One, I don't want someone to buy it in front of me, and the other is that we signed non-disclosure agreements in both these negotiations. One is an FM, one is an AM. All I can say is that neither is doing talk now. I can say that because a lot of people are saying to me, we know what station, and you probably don't. So that's all I'll say. So we would bring a new talk station to the market. We're not derailing anybody who's out there now. We honestly don't know if it would be FM or AM, but we're putting a lot of time and effort into this. And recently, bluntly speaking, because of the efforts of some of you guys who have given us a combination of donations and loans, I've stopped. I was doing side jobs, and even I was up for a couple of jobs here in town and applied at a couple of television news jobs, up for something, ironically, at Glenn Beck's Blaze Network, talking to them. We stopped it all. We are making this effort full-time, and that's why I went public, and that's why we're on the air right now. and be careful and for what we let out and what we don't. But at this time, we're going public. We want to see what support is out there. And it paid off. And if you didn't see the Tucson Weekly article, just with that Tucson Weekly article alone and some people on Facebook, we have a couple of other investors that have come to the table that seem very interested. I'm very, very excited about that. And this should happen. This should happen. And part of it, and I tell people, and I know some of you will believe this if you know me and some won't, but this is bigger than me at this point. If I would not be on the air, I would still do this. The only benefit I have is that at least I have a recognizable name, so that when we do this, there might be a couple of people that will tune in based on the fact that they heard my name before, and then they'll find the other hosts, and it'll be a wonderful thing. So, but I'm doing it because there have been so many of you guys that say, I'm tired of what's out there, and I like Garrett, I like John, I like whatever, but there's got to be more to it. We need that heritage station again in town. We need a place where we know we can talk about other things like missile defense, Native American comic books, have a comedian on, or what have you. We need more than just what's out there. And we need to know when something happens in our community, bad or good, that they can celebrate it on this station if it's good, and they can work with us to get through it if it's bad. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to have solid hosts here. We'll find a way to pay them, and some of them will end up selling their own shows, whatever it is. We'll find a way to make people get on the air here that we have proposed 8 to 12 hours. Haven't figured out how far I'll be able to do this with all local programming, starting from 4 or 5 in the morning right up till noontime at least. And this will be the first time in a long time that anyone in this town has had that kind of local influence. And we'll still do the worldwide stories, and we'll still have famous authors and presidents and politicians and all that from all around the country, but it still is basically a local show, and the most local group of shows that have been done in many, many years in this community, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, what I need Danielle to do as we hit the 1 o'clock hour is come up with something that'll allow us to eat a donut, to queue up, to try to check on Craig Gass. I don't know. Arts, I'm worried about the sound. He was not in that original thing, right? What else do we have in that original group of articles? He's in there? No, who was that? No, see, you're looking at a different. And that one's in there? I thought I took that one out. Meltzer was real short? That's the one I want to do. Yeah, Ray speaks of the Yankees. He grew up and he worked in the New York Yankees organization. We're going to play this interview for a few minutes. We had him on not too long ago because he just wrote his book. And I want to play this. We're going to see if we can regroup and try to pull this off for 3 more hours. So what we need is phone calls from you folks. When we get back, listen to this interview. Don't go anywhere. Tell your friends. Post it on Facebook. And please, if you'd like to see us continue and pull off a station and put out the product that some of you guys have come to enjoy, tell your friends to try to give us a little bit of a donation on powertalkmedia.com. And if it's a loan and you need it paid back, please just specify that. We already have 2 people who have done that, and we'll be doing that and paying them back too. So we appreciate the support. Meantime, just stick with us, and we hope to do you proud. We'll be back after Mr. Negron.
Well, you know what? There's nothing like the Yankees. I've been with other teams, and when I was with Texas, when I was with Cleveland, I always missed the Yankees, and part of the reason why I always went back. I mean, it's like being in Oz. It's a whole different stratosphere, you know. And you know, the one thing that I miss the most is the fact that George Steinbrenner is not there anymore, because he was so magical. He was so much fun. Could he be crazy? The craziest. Could he be a maniac sometimes? Absolutely. But he was also like incredibly warm and very sensitive. And you know what? He treated the lesser employees way better than he treated his GM or his assistant GM. It was just weird, you know. He was just funny guy that way, and it's been an incredible place to work at.
And he was bigger than life, of course. And now your book is a positive book, Yankee Miracles, and it's uplifting. It tells some good stories. I have to ask you, what is it about some of the athletes? Now, my son, for example, loves Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter seems perfect in a lot of ways, right? He's handsome, he's a nice guy to everybody, and he's having a fantastic year. But then there are people that aren't Yankee fans. Oh, he's too perfect. We don't like him. He's this, he's that. What is it about somebody like Jeter? Is there a jealousy with a guy like that?
It's what you call, as Steinbrenner would always say to me, the most dangerous word in the world, and that word is jealousy. Okay? Because there's no reason not to like the guy. Okay? I mean, he shows up to play every day. He plays hard every day. He does what he has to do. He's philanthropic. Why wouldn't you like this guy? He never has gotten into trouble off the field. Why would you not like this guy? He's almost too perfect. Maybe that's just it. Like I tell you, people get jealous at the most weirdest scenarios.
I think you're right, Ray. And a lot of the work that you do does deal with philanthropic people, and you've gotten people to write checks and to help out those less fortunate over the years. I mean, that's what you do. Who's someone who might surprise us with his generosity that we might not think of as such a good guy?
Well, you know what? I mean, that's just something that I learned in watching Steinbrenner from day one. He was philanthropic with me. He gave me an opportunity when anybody else would just throw me into the can and said, leave him in there. And you know what? He tried to do that, and for whatever the reason, after he caught me doing the graffiti on the walls of outside Yankee Stadium, for whatever reason, he came back. He said, give me the kid. He took me into the Yankee locker room. I still didn't know what was going on. When he asked for a uniform, I thought they were going to give me a jail jumpsuit. Okay? And they're giving me a Yankee uniform. And that night, I'm the bat boy for the historic New York Yankees. So, I mean, come on. You know, just one of the weirdest thing that ever happened in my life.
Ray, if we didn't know it was true, I wouldn't believe that story for a minute. I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it? I mean, what did you tell your family that night when you got caught?
Well, I didn't have to say anything because he told them all. You know, he said everything he had to say. He told them exactly what went down. You know, my mother was in denial. She didn't want to believe it. Because, you know the old saying, not my kid. Okay? And, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I had a job with the Yankees for the rest of that summer and for the following year. And 2 years later, because of that situation, I'm drafted by the New York Yankees. By the Pittsburgh Pirates in the second round, no less.
Fantastic. All right, I got to ask about Alex Rodriguez because he's such a dilemma for people in the clubhouse because I'm going back to comments about him having people get him drinks and things like that. What was it about Alex that rubbed people the wrong way that he's fixed since then?
Alex is this era's Reggie Jackson, okay? But Reggie had more of a flair in doing it. And you know what? I will say this. Alex not a bad guy. Alex does a lot of real good things. And you know what? And he makes an effort to get along with his teammates every single day. So, I mean, you can go one by one and, you know, you're not going to find too many guys who are going to have negative things to say about Alex in the clubhouse. All right? And, I mean, I don't see it. If anybody dirties him, again, that word, jealousy, it's because people are jealous of the guy, etc. You know, they're jealous of his swagger. But this is a good guy. And you know what? He helps his teammates out. He's been great with Robinson Cano and all the Latin guys in the clubhouse. He always showed them how not to be an idiot, etc., what have you. I can't say anything negative about this guy in the clubhouse. Nah, Alex, for me, he's been terrific. And you know what? I'm a straight shooter. And if someone is a schmuck in that clubhouse, I'm going to tell you, I don't care.
How about one of your favorites? I mean, I grew up in the Greg Nettles, Munson, Catfish Hunter You know, those were the days that I was into the Yankees the most. Who was one of your favorite players from days gone by for the Yanks?
You know what? I mean, pound for pound, from the standpoint of what he represented as a baseball player and as a man, I would have to say Thurman Munson. You know,
Wow.
I would have to say Thurman Munson. For me, during a 10-year stretch, in my 40 years with the Yankees, I would have to say he was the best Yankee that I ever saw.
Wow.
Okay, he was clutch. He was a leader. He didn't want that label of captain. When Steinbrenner asked him to put a C on his Yankee shirt, he said, that's not even going to happen. Okay, and that was Thurman Munson. And again, a guy who would put you in your place in a heartbeat, but at the same time, if you needed a pair of shoes, he'd take his shoes off to give them to you. That was who Thurman Munson was.
Tell me something about Billy Martin, because no one understands Billy, and obviously George knew how to play that game, and it worked out, and the Yankees did very well with Billy Martin. What kind of a person was he?
You ever see the movie A Bronx Tale? Remember the character Sonny, the Chaz Palminteri role?
Yeah.
That was Billy Martin. Okay, whenever I see that film, that's Billy. Okay, and he was strong that way. Very proud to be Italian. He loved his heritage. Loved to be able to rub elbows with Sinatra. I'll never forget the fact that he introduced me to Sinatra over dinner one time, and it was like one of the greatest experience that I ever had. Not because of the fact that I met Sinatra, but because I knew the magnitude of Sinatra and the fact that Billy thought that I was good enough of a person to be in the company of such royalty. Okay, and Billy didn't care about that. Hey, you're my boy, and I'm going to go eat with Frank, and you're coming with me. Okay, that was the Billy Martin that I knew. But you know what? If you cross him, you better duck, because he's throwing a right hook and a left jab.
If you were going to be buried as a Yankee and you were going to wear someone's jersey, whose jersey out there, what player now makes you feel, I don't know, special about your Yankee years?
A player from today?
Any era at all.
Oh, any era at all. Then you know what? I have, that's tough. But I would have to go with Lou Gehrig, number one, because of the mystique, and Lou Gehrig has meant so much in my life. The Pride of the Yankees, the movie, my number one film ever, and it made me love the Yankees. And I would have to say Lou Gehrig. Meeting Mrs. Gehrig and from her mouth, hearing about her husband, and then being around Pete Sheehy, the historic clubhouse man, and having him tell me about Lou Gehrig and the Babe. It's just the other day I said to Raul Ibanez, because Raul Ibanez is probably the nicest baseball player that I've ever known, and the other one that's the nicest guy that I always told him he should have been a Yankee was Jim Thome. Okay?
Yeah.
Jim Thome, because to me, I used to say that he always wanted to be a Yankee. He always wanted to be a Yankee. And he said, Ray, if I was a Yankee, who would I be? And I said, you're a cross between Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig.
Wow.
And so it would have to be Lou Gehrig.
Ray, I'd say you have to write a book, but you already did. Yankee Miracles, Life with the Boss and the Bronx Bombers. I hope it sells 1 million copies. And thanks for your time. I could go on and on with you. It's great stories. And thanks for the work you do with the communities and helping these kids.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
All right, we are back. And if you want to call in, now's the time to do it. 750-7456. And while that tape was playing, I got a, full disclosure. I don't know how many people out there will remember a guy named Dave Schuyler. Dave Schuyler was one heck of a character. I mean, he's a radio guy from the old radio guy days, and I think he's younger than I am, but the big L.A. voice and that kind of thing. And I asked him if he would do me a favor yesterday. And you don't call someone in the middle of an afternoon and say, "Can you do something within an hour?" You just don't do that. But I was thinking last minute, wouldn't it be fun if we had those radio imaging spots, You're listening to, those guys with the exaggerated voices and all that, like, stuff that goes on with that. He was kind enough to do it. And the next time you hear us on the air, and maybe I'll put something on, we'll produce them and we'll put it on the website, powertalkmedia.com. Just a riot. I would do it. You can play the whole raw. He did it in a nice, clean fashion, so we could almost play the whole raw thing just for the entertainment value. It's very, very funny. You're not going to mess with that? You're afraid it'll blow up on us? All right. Anyway, I'm going to try one more time to get Craig Gass. So right here, while I'm talking to you, I'm going to put call us. We're on live, and just see one more time if he'll call. What's funny about Facebook? Facebook gets people in a lot of trouble. And Craig Gass is supposed to be on my show now, and he's on Facebook posting about silly stuff. You know what I mean? So I just caught him. He's talking about Zimmerman, and he's sitting in his hotel room. And I got to get him on the phone. I want him to be the last guest today. Now, I think that someone said they were going to make it to 4 o'clock. I don't see that happening. And I appreciate that you guys that are hung in there with us through what I hope you found to be a bunch of interesting guests. It would be perfect to end with Craig Gass, so I'm trying to get him to call the show. In the meantime, what we'll probably do is we'll talk our way till 1:30. We'll end this segment. Again, these segments are taped in blocks, and we will have this on our website, powertalkmedia.com or jimparisi.com, and you'll be able to play these later. I will play the first couple of hours in case you missed it, but I would like to have Craig, if I can get him, be the last one, because what a perfect way. If you guys don't know who Craig Gass is, now this is really testing people who go back a long time listening to the show. First of all, let me finish this thought, and then I'll tell you what Jay Dobbins had posted on Facebook. We had, and I'll tell the full story real quickly, Tim Richards at Clear Channel had a connection, and friends, I guess, with Craig Gass. Craig Gass was on the Howard Stern show, and he's a voice actor and a person, impressionist, impersonator, I don't know. And he's real good. And he does a handful of characters. He does, I can never think of the guy, Tracy from Saturday Night Live, African-American comedian who's really funny. He does, Tracy Morgan, thank you. How'd you come up with that? He does a great Al Pacino, a fantastic Christopher Walken. He does just a sensational Tom Arnold. So Tim came to me and said, would you appreciate or have any reason to promote Craig Gass? He's coming to town and he's going to do a concert here in town. And I said, well, who is he? And he told me who he was. And he said, he's pretty good, And I said, well, let me hear what he does. And I went online and I heard his work. He's real good. And he's kind of crass because comedians can tend to be that way sometimes. But when he does these voices, wow. So because Tim wanted to push it and I thought it was fascinating, I had a 4-hour show to do that morning. We had Craig come in and out of the studio for some 2 or 3 hours. So he came in the studio as a different 2 or 3 people. Now, if you think it's hard to have Craig having to remember himself, whether he's Christopher Walken or, Tracy Morgan or whatever, imagine having to be the idiot host who has to make believe he's talking while I'm looking at one guy. And how do you think about this, Mr. Pacino? Yeah, let me go over and ask Tom Arnold a question. And I'm doing all that to this one guy who's sitting right across from me. And it was not the easiest thing to do, but he did a great, great job. And now I'm going to give him grief because, I can't get him on the show, and he's trying to we were supposed to get him on this afternoon. But we had callers, and I felt guilty because we had callers call and say, could I talk to Christopher Walken, please? And we'd say, sure. And I forget who was answering the calls then, whether it was Jess or whether it was Razor or whatever. And they would jump on and they would say, Mr. Pacino, I really liked your work in Dog Day Afternoon. And he would say, thank you very much. And all that. And I'm like, oh, man, we're deceiving people. I hate that, But he's good. So I'm going to try to get him while I talk to you for the next 12 minutes. If I don't get them, what I'll probably do is say goodbye to you guys, thank you up and down for your support, and play the first couple of hours that we have on tape, and in theory is sitting there waiting to be queued up on tape in case you miss it. Jay Dobbins says, thanks, Jim Parisi. We got a lot done in 1 hour. We talked about the White House, Department of Justice, ATF, criminal acts, corruption, Hell's Angels, fist fights, shootouts, Ricky Ellison, No Angel, U of A football, Sal Point football, scandals, life, everything but world hunger and AIDS, which I also have thoughts on. That was Jay's post on Facebook 36 minutes ago. You know, Facebook is that double-edged sword because I hate it and I love it at the same time, but we get to do something like that. Want to hear feedback from you guys, too. JimParisiShow@gmail.com on people that you think would be excellent hosts, but don't necessarily come from the host mold. And we've got a lot of people, and there's some solid people in town like Frank Antonori and people like that, but they're specifically one party, very strongly one party or the other and everything. I would much rather have people that I find to be fascinating people. And the way I always describe it, if you can hold court in a room full of people in real life, then you can, unless you're really introverted, you can be someone who can be an interesting talk host. And I want to thank Valerie, too, for the new Power Talk logo, for doing work on the website. And that's probably why Val didn't get to meet Susie here on her schedule. I watched Val go to bed at 7 o'clock this morning when I'm running out the door, waking up Danielle. So it was one of those days today. Fantastic day. Love being back in this kind of a situation where we can bring guests like this to you and, you know, see what we can do. Are you on my Facebook, Danielle, too? Can you write to Craig? Can you see Craig Gass talking about the Zimmerman case? Can you see that post? Underneath that I put, Craig, call us, we're on live. Do me a favor. Put, Craig, call the Jim Parisi Show. Here's the direct line, and let's just see what happens. I don't care. We'll do it one more time. We may as well make Craig feel a little bit guilty that he's not calling in. And in all, with due respect, when I asked Craig to be on the show, I said, look, I know you don't do unpaid gigs. He's not promoting a book. He's not here in town. There's really no reason for him to do it other than just trying to be nice to a guy who put him on the air when he was here in town. But maybe he'll jump in anyway, and we will call that the last guest of the day. The one thing we didn't really figure out was how to eat while we were doing the show. You know, we don't have the commercial breaks built in, so it's like I have muscle milk, and I'm not working out, and I'm trying to drink muscle milk, and I think she's eating 1 or 2 crullers, if that's what you call them. So we'll try this one more time. Guys, I appreciate every last one of you. Don't forget the new home for us, Power Talk Media. Please put that into the back of your mind somewhere because we really will be using that a lot. And whatever station we come up with will be Power Talk. I can't really say the number. Power Talk 760 50 97. See, just throw random numbers out there. And we hope that it becomes part of your vocabulary over the coming years. If we do make this happen, it will be 5 to 7 years that I will agree to do the morning show for this venture at the minimum. We have people like Jay Dobbins we're approaching for a show. We have other people in town that we've approached for a show. We have people out of town that if they do a show, will do a Tucson-centric show for us because they know the area and even though they're not physically here. So there will be very little in the way of national hosts. Another thing that you can do if you'd like, if there's a national host that's not currently on in this market, contact us, send the name, JimParisiShow@gmail.com. Send the name to me. Say, I really like Mary Smith, Bob Jones, what have you. And we'll research that person. I don't know how many people know this, but generally speaking, unless it's Rush Limbaugh, all the national hosts you hear in town, whether it's KVOI or The Truth or any of the stations in town, it's free to the owner of the station for that host to be on the air. So don't look at it as, wow, to get John Smith, it'll cost Jim too much money. They won't be able to do that. What they get out of it is they sell a regional or a national advertiser on how many cities they get into. So it's easy to go back to that national advertiser and say, hey, now we're in Tucson, Arizona. Greater Tucson area adds another 1 million people. So we can up our rates from, $400 a spot to $430 a spot, and that's what they do. So anyone out there that's not currently on one of the 3 or 4 talk stations here now, we can get that person if we want to. It's a simple matter of a phone call. I've already checked into these things. We can have them on with 2 or 3 days' notice that quickly. So we'd like to have local programming from roughly 4 a.m. to noon, maybe again in the afternoon. In the middle, national hosts. At night, depending on whether we get the FM or the AM, frankly, we'll either repeat the morning shows or we'll do alternative program that might be something like South Point football. Who knows? Or it could be something that's a little more quirky programming because it'll be a slightly smaller audience. If it's the AM, by law, as you know, you have to power down your signal at dusk or at sunset. So if that's the case, then we'll do it differently than we would if we get the FM. So we're full force on this. This is all we'll be doing. So please support us if you like. If you don't, you can listen to the folks that are out there now, and they work hard. I mean, there's nobody in town. I almost say they do a great job, but I don't know. I mean, it depends on your taste. But they're hardworking people, and they're not lazy people who take anything for granted. And if you like the hosts that are out there now, that's good, and you can listen to them, and you can maybe mix us into your listening habits, or you can, let us take over 1 or 2 of the slots. It depends on how you look at it. Not going to be too forceful. It's funny, I'm working with, my consultant is someone who you would know if I told you the name, and I promised her I wouldn't say the name, but she's someone who was instrumental in trying to unseat me when I was at KNST. And when we talk about what's out there and what can be done, we realize that there's a hole in this marketplace for this kind of talk radio, and we have this little battle going on where she says, well, we can at least be number 3 or maybe number 2. And I always go, yeah, number 1. We got to be number 1. She's trying to be realistic and I'm trying to be competitive, but it's fun to talk and to see what we might be able to do in this market. So let's hope that we can make this happen. Stay in touch with us. JimParissiShow.com or PowerTalkMedia.com. You can write to me anytime at JimParissiShow@gmail.com. I'll give Craig maybe about another minute in case he wants to jump in. You know what'll happen. Second I shut the show, Craig will jump in. You know what's going to happen? I'm going to say this on the air. If he does that, I'm going to still do the interview like we're on the air, and I'll tape it, and we'll use it somewhere down the line. Because if for no other reason, I want some people to hear his impersonations. I really want you to hear him on the phone. It's just like you're talking to 10 people. It's Sybil on steroids. It's unbelievable. So we'll try to get him. Hey, wait a minute. I'm giving him way too much publicity considering he stiffed us and didn't call us, aren't I? Yeah, I know. I tend to do that. I haven't looked at the people in chat in a long time, so I don't know who's there. Okay, we still got a few people there. 12 of you, I can't get out of chat today, huh? Who wants to call to end the show? Anybody? 750-7456. We're going to end the show now. We're going to play the last 2.5 hours will be the first 2.5 hours. And hopefully if you missed some of it, you'll enjoy it. And if you just thought it was so darn good, you'll be able to play it again and say, oh, I missed that part. I didn't hear it. Let me listen carefully and see if I can hear Danielle on the phone in the background. Yeah, I think I can hear that person in the background. So remember Power Talk. Power Talk is going to be a new image. And I like the new logo. It's funny how things grow on you. And when we made the first independent voice project venture, I really identified with it. Independent voice, I like that. I like the idea that project, it's like the Alan Parsons project. It reminded me of music. It reminded me of some things that we do like that. Power Talk, this is what we want to do. We want to be out there with a strong signal, getting word across, being the station that when the governor and the senators or Joe Citizen in Tucson or someone has something to say, they know that they can get a straight scoop on our station and not be worried about whether we're going to spin everything either left or right or whatever we're going to do. We'll still have opinions and strong opinions on everything. But if something is not political, like solar power, then we're going to talk about it as if it's solar power, not as if it's liberal or conservative or part of Solyndra or part of Obama or part of... We're going to try to do something that they don't do too often here. We're going to try to look at every point and every issue from a zero budget or balance way of looking at it without bias. And opinions are welcome. And we might say, hey, we can't stand this, or we think the trolley is stupid, or we think whatever. But we'll treat callers with respect, and we'll treat the opposite viewpoint with respect. And like I said to someone who was in my studio yesterday, it's exciting to hear another viewpoint that you had not thought about. even if you still disagree at the end of it, there's a growth that comes with it. To say, I never really thought of it that way. So that's what we're trying to do. And we hope you appreciate it. If you want to contact me, if you want to get a message to Danielle, all you have to do is send jimparisi@gmail.com. If you have a guest suggestion, anything like that. I want to thank Danielle publicly because she's relatively new at this. She's been my producer in some pretty safe environments for about almost a year now. But this was, baptism by fire. And I think it went fairly well. Live stream, by the way, where we put this up for video, there's always a handful of curveballs that are unique to live stream. And some of them we can't control. For example, their commercials, no matter what we do, their commercial audio will be 10 times louder than our show. It's just the way it is. So we're doing our best. We're getting it through so far. We got some nice phone calls. And I think for the most part, we pulled this off. Now, don't forget, we get this radio station, and we will be using the apps on our phones and the internet and live stream and all this as a secondary source. Live stream will be so you could see the video of the shows. But the audio will be on your traditional radio station. And as cars get in their dashboard, computers rather than traditional radio, we hope to be the app that you punch up on your dashboard of your computer in your car, regardless of whether we're on AM or FM, and it'll be crystal clear, and you can listen to us from Tucson to Kalamazoo, Michigan. I had a lot of cities to pick from, Danielle. Kalamazoo. Anyway, thank you guys so much. We're going to wrap this up. Craig didn't call us, so hopefully we'll get him on tape later. And I have that little surprise I told you about. It's someone who we used to do radio with who did some IDs for us. And if you come back to powertalkmedia.com tomorrow, I'll put it up there. Did I already say his name? Well, if so, they might have heard it, might not. And you'll hear some of his sound bites. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. So thank you so much for your support. If you so desire, if you know some big investors in town, please send them our way because there's never enough of them. And if you don't, and you want to help us out a little bit, please. Okay, I'm trying to talk. I have to tell Danielle this. The number 127 is big in my life. The clock is not there. And I'm saying goodbye at the end of the show, and that pops up. It's like 2 feet large. All right, just end the show, why don't you? All right, we're going to do that. Thank you guys so much. JimParisiShow@gmail.com. And we'll be seeing you probably before we're welcome. Thanks for the support. Love you all. Bye-bye.